a voice rang out, demanding that the commotion cease. Hubert's voice echoed through the lab, his frustration reaching its peak as he screamed at the chaos unfolding before him. He was accompanied by the 4 elders, who had arrived to witness the turmoil. Alfoy, still bound, Ghislain with his sword drawn, and the tension in the room was palpable. The Tower Master had arrived, and Vanessa gasped in surprise as she tried to gather her thoughts. Standing beside her, Ghislain remained unfazed, showing no reaction to the appearance of the highest-ranking mage in the tower. At his command, Belinda untied the rope she had used to bind Alfoy, causing him to fall to the floor in distress. Alfoy quickly scrambled to his feet, calling for his master in panic. Watching the scene unfold, Hubert couldn't hide his shock, wondering what had happened. Alfoy rushed to his master, clinging to him while explaining that intruders had appeared. He claimed that he had been trying to stop Vanessa from entering the lab when a young man suddenly attacked him. His voice trembled as he insisted that he had only been trying to prevent the helpless Vanessa from getting hurt. Belinda sneered at the scene, mocking Alfoy for acting like a little girl, which caused him to quickly turn around and protest, asserting that he was a man, not a girl. Still seated on the floor, Vanessa weakly explained that she had only wanted to use the lab, but her words seemed to trigger a memory in Ghislain's mind. He recalled a figure from his past life, someone he had heard about during a turbulent period through one of his subordinates who loved to spread rumors and news. The Red Nightmare, a 7th Circle mage, known for her unpredictability and madness. Ghislain thought to himself that even someone like her, the embodiment of nightmare itself, could have moments like this. Hubert's anger flared. He shouted that not only had the young man broken into the tower, but he had also tried to harm his disciple. He conjured a fire-based spell with his wand, preparing to burn him to ashes without a trace. However, Ghislain remained calm and composed. Belinda gently asked what his young master intended to do, sensing the tension in the air. Despite the clear threat, Ghislain took a passive stance, refusing to let his emotions control him. He stepped forward, introducing himself without hesitation. He informed Hubert that he was the Archduke of the Perdium territory, Ghislain Perdium, and that he had come to trade runestones. For a brief moment, Hubert was taken aback, struggling to process the unexpected turn of events. He stood there, stunned by the young man's calm demeanor and unexpected purpose. Still recovering from his shock, Alfoy couldn't believe what he was hearing. He asked in disbelief if Ghislain truly meant to trade runestones. With a warm smile, Ghislain offered to show Hubert the workers waiting outside the castle with the cargo. The group made their way outside, where they found 10 wagons filled to the brim with runestones. Even Vanessa, whom the elders had deemed worthless, was part of this extraordinary revelation. The sight before the elders left them speechless, unable to comprehend the sudden turn of events. Only moments before, they had been arguing about resources, and now, the answer had arrived at their doorstep. The Blue Hat Elder was the first to speak, exclaiming in disbelief that such a situation couldn't be real. The Red Hat Elder followed, unable to fathom where such a young man could have acquired so many runestones. The Yellow Hat Elder asked Hubert what they should do, noting the sheer amount of the precious stones before them. Meanwhile, Hubert stood frozen, his face darkening, though his mind raced with excitement. A maniacal laugh bubbled up within him as he realized the opportunity that had just appeared. He saw the arrival of the runestones as a divine gift, one that would allow him to finally crush the rival Crimson Magic Tower once and for all. Though his outer appearance remained calm and composed, his inner thoughts were consumed by glee. He spoke aloud, downplaying the significance of the discovery. Hubert claimed that the amount of runestones was less than he had expected, and the quality didn't seem as great as he had hoped. He cleared his throat, trying to maintain a semblance of professionalism. Standing nearby, Kair seethed with anger. The nerve of Hubert to belittle the very stones they had worked so hard to acquire. His hand instinctively reached for his sword, seething in silence. Timid and unsure, Vanessa ventured a comment, suggesting that even one wagon of runestones could last for weeks. But Hubert snapped at her, telling her to be silent and leave, mocking her for her apparent uselessness. He cursed the legacy of a late mage, blaming Leonardo for leaving behind such a headache. He further insulted Vanessa, telling her that if she was so useless, she should at least be self-aware. Understanding who Vanessa might become, Ghislain chose to remain silent. He kept his thoughts to himself, merely contemplating the situation in his mind. Hubert turned his gaze to the elders, asking if they shared his opinion. Observing the situation with sharp eyes, the elders quickly came to an understanding of what Hubert was scheming. The blue hat elder picked up a piece from the wagons and inspected it closely, agreeing that it didn't seem as impressive as it should have been. The yellow hat elder added that considering the source of these stones, there was a chance they could be counterfeit. Belinda's voice was laced with anger as she retorted, demanding an explanation. The idea that their young lord had worked so hard to acquire the runestones only to have them called fake seemed incomprehensible to her. Standing by her side, Ghislain remained completely unfazed by their schemes, his demeanor unshaken. The yellow hat elder, attempting to downplay the situation, remarked that no matter how difficult it was to obtain the runestones, it was not their concern. He pointed out the prevalence of scams these days, a sentiment shared by the green hat elder, who added that it didn't make sense to trust the seller's word alone. After listening to their responses, Ghislain finally spoke, his words calm but pointed. He asked if they were saying they wouldn't buy the runestones, which took the elders by surprise. Ghislain then gave an order, telling his group to leave. He commanded that they should move on, making it clear that the Scarlet Magic Tower was not interested in the trade. Belinda, sneering at the elders, followed his lead, her expression mocking them. However, Hubert, sensing the panic rising within him, quickly instructed them to hold on. He whispered to one of them to play along, and shortly after, the blue hat elder, eager to smooth things over, suggested that they might buy the runestones after all, out of respect for the effort Ghislain had put into bringing them. The elder claimed that returning empty-handed would reflect poorly on the Tower Master's reputation, and that they should help save face. Adopting a smug tone, Hubert agreed, expressing that it sounded like a better course of action. He declared that, out of his great generosity, they would purchase all of the runestones Ghislain had brought, though, he added, the price would be slightly below market value. However, Ghislain remained unbothered by their sudden change in tone and responded calmly, pointing out that there had been a misunderstanding. He instructed Kair to leave just one wagon of the runestones and to take the rest back, a request that caused Kair to momentarily hesitate. With a satisfied smirk, Ghislain added that they had agreed to sell only one wagon's worth of the precious stones. This caused Hubert and the elders to panic, knowing that the resources they desperately needed could slip through their fingers. Seizing the opportunity, Kair quickly turned and confirmed that Ghislain was right. He had indeed forgotten about the terms of the agreement. He then issued a command to the mercenaries to move the wagons, and they immediately obeyed, swiftly following through with the instructions. Now flustered and struggling to comprehend what was happening, Hubert demanded an explanation. Ghislain apologized, explaining that it had been a misunderstanding regarding the quality of the runestones, which had been caused by his subordinate's error. He further explained that their destination was the Crimson Magic Tower, and that they simply needed cash to cover their travel expenses. This statement made Hubert's heart sink. The prospect of those runestones going to the Crimson Magic Tower instead of his own was a crushing blow, one that could potentially ruin his chances of regaining the top position. Attempting to salvage the situation, Hubert feigned lightheartedness and suggested that he had been joking earlier to break the ice. He invited Ghislain to come up and talk for a bit, his tone suddenly shifting to one of friendliness. Ghislain smiled, content with how things were progressing. He knew that the minds of these old mages were well within his grasp, and with that, he accepted Hubert's offer. The group moved to the master's office where Hubert, the four elders, and Ghislain sat down. The big three remained nearby, standing watch over their young leader. Eager to assert his authority, Hubert introduced the elders of the Scarlet Magic Tower. He explained that these mages had all reached the fifth circle, making them the most powerful figures in the tower aside from the master. Brimming with confidence, Ghislain responded that such a level of power was impressive. He remarked that the Scarlet Magic Tower was indeed powerful, calling it the second strongest magic tower in the north, though the mention of the Crimson Magic Tower as the second strongest carried a mocking tone. Clearly nervous, Hubert attempted to defend his tower by insisting that the rumors about the Crimson Magic Tower were false. He maintained that the Scarlet Magic Tower still held the top position in the north. With a casual shrug, Ghislain agreed, but added that it didn't really matter. Whispering to Gillian, Belinda expressed her concern about Ghislain's provocation, but Gillian remained calm, confident that Ghislain knew exactly what he was doing. On the other hand, Kaer was practically brimming with excitement. He watched the elders, sensing how they were being played by Ghislain. Eager to move things along, Hubert waved his hand dismissively, asking how much Ghislain intended to sell the runestones for. He assured him that if they took the goods elsewhere, they wouldn't even get their money's worth. Ghislain raised his hand, silencing the conversation, and announced that the price would be double the market value. This statement left Hubert stunned, momentarily speechless. Double? Hubert exclaimed in disbelief, his face contorting with frustration. He couldn't comprehend how anyone could conduct business in such a manner. He rebuked Ghislain, claiming that he had no understanding of how the world worked, and that this was not how negotiations were done. Hubert accused him of being taught all wrong, and of making up terms without any regard for the process of negotiation. Ghislain spoke plainly, expressing his belief that the Scarlet Magic Tower deserved to pay double for the runestones. This remark immediately caused the Blue Hat Elder to exclaim in disbelief, while another elder shouted, questioning whether Ghislain thought the Scarlet Magic Tower was some kind of joke. Visibly annoyed, Hubert called out to Ghislain, his tone shifting dramatically. He expressed how much it irked him to see someone so young speak so boldly without understanding the consequences of his actions. Hubert locked eyes with Ghislain, his gaze filled with rage. Despite the harsh words and the obvious power disparity, Ghislain remained composed, showing no fear as he faced a six-circle mage. He stood firm, not the slightest trace of anxiety in his expression. Attempting to regain control of the situation, Hubert acknowledged that Ghislain was young and that mistakes were natural. He offered a concession, suggesting they pay slightly over the market price if Ghislain agreed to sell everything. However, Ghislain remained silent and stood up, prompting Hubert to ask why he was getting up. Without missing a beat, Ghislain casually responded that Hubert didn't seem interested in the deal. He mentioned that he had offered the runestones at double the price, but if that was not satisfactory, he would simply head to the Crimson Magic Tower instead. He began to walk away, leaving Hubert flustered. However, Hubert quickly told him to stop, his tone shifting once again to a more agreeable one. He urged Ghislain to stay, stating that he hadn't meant to turn down the offer and that he had just gotten a bit worked up. Hubert asked him to sit back down. Ghislain smiled, turning back to face the group. The big three, who had been observing closely, finally realized that the Tower Master and the elders were being played by Ghislain's clever manipulation. They stood still, stunned by how the young man was outwitting the seasoned mages. Clearly frustrated but attempting to save face, Hubert acknowledged Ghislain's guts and made a new offer. He said they would buy the runestones at double the market price as Ghislain had initially suggested. With an air of calm confidence, Ghislain agreed, prompting Hubert to let out a frustrated sigh. However, Ghislain added a stipulation. He would sell only one wagon at that price, not all of them. Hubert's frustration grew as he protested, insisting that they should sell everything. With logic and calm reasoning, Ghislain explained that if word got out that they sold to the Scarlet Magic Tower for double the price, the Crimson Magic Tower might offer triple, so it didn't make sense to sell everything for just double. This caused Hubert to lose his temper, screaming that Ghislain was pushing too far. His patience had worn thin. Unfazed by Hubert's outburst, Ghislain simply stood up and began to walk away again, prompting Hubert to shout for him to wait. Realizing he was about to lose the deal, Hubert hastily offered to buy everything for triple the market price. Ghislain paused, a small smile crossing his face as he recognized that his plan had worked. Finally, Ghislain sat down again, expressing his satisfaction that they were now speaking the same language. He praised the Scarlet Magic Tower, acknowledging it as the top magic tower in the north, and in turn, Hubert quickly stood up to go get the money, eager to close the deal. Inside, Hubert fumed with frustration. He was a sixth circle mage, yet he had been outmaneuvered by a country bumpkin. He couldn't understand why these ridiculous problems kept arising during his time as Tower Master. He resolved that if Ghislain ever tried something like this again, he would burn the young man's head. Just as Hubert was about to leave, Ghislain called out, halting him with a final request. Ghislain revealed that he wasn't done yet and had one more condition to present. Hubert, his patience now at an end, snapped at Ghislain, asking what more he wanted. Calmly, Ghislain stated that he wanted Vanessa handed over to him, leaving the room in stunned silence.